The Jets might have lost the game in New Orleans yesterday, but they did make a statement regarding their head coach, as the team played hard and proved once again what we've been saying for weeks now, that the team is heading in the right direction and the young talented players are gaining valuable experience. We'll recap the Jets' loss, including Bryce Petty's performance, as Jets Uncovered on the Our Lads Football Radio Network starts now. All right, thanks for tuning in to another edition of Jets Uncovered on the Our Lads Football Radio Network. I'm Greg DePalma. And joining me from RotoWire.com is sports writer Jan Levine. Jan, just another tough loss this season for the Jets, but some good news came out of the loss. That includes the defense, which did a solid job against future Hall of Famer Drew Brees. So it wasn't all bad.
No, I mean, I think I'd have to say is that the piece of the puzzle that was the most encouraging and I thought played the best by far was the defense. I mean, they kept the Jets in the game. I mean, if you look at it, it was a 24-19 game. The offense really did very little. If you look at Bryce Petty's overall numbers, you look at Bilal Powell's overall numbers, you look at any kind of attack or lack thereof that was generated yesterday. And despite that, the defense kept the team in the game. They generated, I think, 3 turnovers, if I remember correctly. Jamal Adams was all over the place. I thought Darren Lee had a pretty good game. Leonard Williams, before he was injured, was playing fairly well. They were helped by a couple of replay reviews that overturned a couple of touchdowns. But despite that, you're looking at a one-possession game, even after missing the onside kick until Mark Ingram, ran off a 50-yard touchdown to make the score look a lot better. And also maybe help. I have to check in terms of what the spread was. I'm not sure if it covered the spread or not.
No.
But it made a 24-19 close game look like a little bit more of a blowout at 31-19. But overall, I thought the defense was clearly by far the best aspect of the game yesterday, while the offense, I think they showed why Josh McCown was the quarterback. It showed just how far Bryce Petty still needs to come, and part of that may come with the additional reps he's getting every week. But it's also very interesting to note that, Todd Bowles has already named Bryce Petty as the starter this week, which gives us all a fairly good insight in terms of the view as to where Christian Hackenberg sits in the pecking order these days.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think it's, as you said, though, I think it's more of I don't know what to make out of Petty's performance in one game. First of all, he hasn't started in the whole year. Second of all, it's only like his 5th career start. Third of all, it's against a playoff team. It's on the road, in a dome. You've got Chet. You got Morton's conservative play calling. And then I really didn't know. See, because it's only one game, it's hard for me to understand. Were we looking, because Petty looked even a little bit more different than I expected him to look, and that's again, and was it the conservative? Was it all the conservative play calling? Was it the new coordinator? Because again, this is a different system for Petty. Was it also Petty learning behind Josh McCown, Mr. Checkdown? Because it seemed like Bryce Petty did an awful lot of that. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to, and I look at it and I go, okay, it's one game. I guess we'll find out, because there's no way they can possibly go with this game plan again next week. I mean, obviously they've got to start opening things up, and then at that point, as long as he gets protection, I hope we get to see the Bryce Petty that will throw the ball downfield a little bit, because I don't, those interceptions really weren't his fault. I mean, the end of the game interception was exactly that, an end of the game interception that every quarterback gets. And the first interception wasn't even really his fault and should have been pass interference. So his interceptions didn't bother me at all. It was some of the, his passes were in the ground, which I've never seen before. And he just looked conservative. And I don't know if that was just a combination of him not feeling like he didn't want to turn the ball over, the conservative play calling, or what. I guess we'll find out more this week when he does get those some more of those reps.
I just think it's an easy excuse to blame the lack of reps or this game plan. I mean, I didn't view Josh McCown as a conservative quarterback. I mean, given the number of down the field throws he tried to make this year to Robbie Anderson, and to other guys on the team, to utilization of, Cincinnati and Jenkins in terms of in the slot earlier in the year before he started to get doubled, their use of guys like Kearse for downfield attack. So I don't buy into the fact that it was a conservative game plan. Now, but I will caveat.
I mean, they ran the ball more than they threw it. How can that not be a conservative game plan?
But again, maybe they meant a bit more conservative for a couple things. One, New Orleans' defense has been a lot better than expected this year. That's part one. Part two, I will say, is maybe it was the fact that they needed to get Petty more comfortable in the offense, and they felt that helping him maybe check down a little bit would enable him to be a bit more comfortable.
No, that's also his job. That's his responsibility. That's why I was comparing McCown, because McCown does that a lot. Again, Petty doesn't have to throw the short passes. He can throw the deep passes. He has 2 or 3 options on every play call. That's what I don't know. That's the thing I don't know.
And maybe also was the fact that they just didn't feel comfortable with opening up the gas tank for Petty right now, given that this is his first game on the center. In terms of
do you agree with that, though?
Super Bowl.
Do you agree with that decision?
No, I probably would have opened up a bit more, but I also don't think that Petty displayed a tremendous amount of accuracy in general, which also might have impacted the game.
I don't know.
Well.
I kind of think the game, we saw that from the very beginning. Run. From the very beginning. And I, you know what I think they should have done? I mean, because look, when you got a guy like Petty too, who needs to have some confidence, I mean, really what you should do, I would rather see them show him that they believe in him. Go out there, spread them out in the beginning of the game, throw the ball, and I'm not saying do it for a half, do it for a couple, do it for 3 or 4 plays. Go out there with 4 receivers, do something so he loosens up. Don't kind of make him kind of get crouched into kind of feeling conservative with the runs and the runs and the runs and the runs. And, I guess they don't want me to turn the ball over, and I'm not going to turn the ball over. I see a guy short, I'm going to throw the ball short. This is what I learned all season. I'm on the sidelines. I see what McCown does. I'm going to do that. So, again, now, as you mentioned, the McCown deep passes, will that come? But is that also more of the reps and the play calling? And that's why I said I'd rather see, what happens this week, even though I will say I'm not saying this meaning I need to see more from Bryce Petty to believe that he's going to be our starting quarterback next year. So I'm not saying that. Unless he does something dramatic next week, he definitely doesn't look like he's the guy that we're looking at as far as a starter right now. But, we hope into the next couple of games he can prove that he could be the backup.
It made me a bit nervous, getting me to think that you thought he was going to be the future starter, because I think what we saw last year is the hope he would be a good backup. I still think what we see this year is the hope that he will be a decent backup. I don't necessarily know if that is still the case. I do think the Jets are going to give him 2 more games to show that whether or not he can be the backup, because I'd be surprised, barring injury, that we see Christian Hackenberg the rest of the way, be it right or be it wrong. I just think that the mindset for him has been made up already, based upon his lack of ability probably in practices. And it's something I think I told you when I went to go hear Phil Simms speak a couple of weeks ago, is why do you think a guy who can't show any display of accuracy in practice is going to all of a sudden do a 180 and turn it on in the game? What you see in practice is a lot of times what you are going to see in a game. And maybe the Jets have seen enough in practice to realize that he's just not ready. Now with Petty, I think both of us liked his moxie. Both of us liked the arm strength. Both of us thought he had an opportunity potentially to be a backup, getting the ball deep downfield, utilizing somebody like, Robbie Anderson and taking advantage of his speed, or taking advantage of guys.
Yeah, and he hasn't showed any. He didn't show any of that yesterday.
No, he didn't show any of that yesterday.
I mean, he didn't even try to show it. We didn't even see it. We didn't see a bad. We just didn't see it.
It couldn't. A, it could have been opportunities. B, he also potentially could have missed chances that were there that he didn't take because he didn't want to make mistakes.
Yeah, I think that could have happened. Yeah, I think it was a mixture of 2. Good. Look, there's no doubt that there was conservative play calling. Now, when there was the opportunity, did he not go for it? So that combination, I think, is what we got yesterday. We got the conservative play calling, and then, sure, there should have been shots for him that he just didn't take. So I can't imagine that these guys were open all the time. And look, it's probably all. And this is why I also want to preface this by what I said at the very open, which is the kid hasn't played in a year, and he's got 5 career starts. So we have to cut him some slack in that department. He's not Nick Foles. He hasn't had 30, 40 starts. He's 32 years old. He's playing with a playoff team. It's a lot. It's different. And we have to judge him differently, which is the whole reason why I wanted to see him earlier this season, because I wanted to see him get an opportunity to play a while to find out exactly what we have, because we are pretty much where we, record-wise, and not going to the playoffs and all of that, and still not knowing what the quarterback situation is for next year. It's the same thing. It's just 3 years of wasted quarterback nonsense. No matter how good or bad a Josh McCown or a Ryan Fitzpatrick might have looked at times. But we will hope to see a better Bryce Petty and maybe even an open playbook next week, even though you would think the defensive pressure is going to be a lot harder next week going up against Bosa and Ingram.
Jets have a couple of tough games going forward. I'm interested to kind of see what happens against Chargers on this weekend. What we see from Petty. Do we see some growth? Do we see the ability to potentially take shots downfield? Part of it, obviously, that has to help as to whether or not the offensive line provides him the protection. But is he willing to, I wouldn't say throw caution to the wind, but be a bit less conservative in terms of the mindset associated with the game plan? To me, that's what I'm really looking for out of Petty this week, because if he can do that and have at least a modicum of success, even if they don't win, to me, that's a pretty big thing in terms of where you're going to see him moving forward. Because if he does play relatively well the next 2 weeks, he's got an outside shot at being, in my opinion, number 3 next year if Josh McCown isn't brought back as the number 2.
Yeah, and look, let's keep in mind too that whatever the game plan is when you have a quarterback like Petty come in, Todd Bowles isn't sitting there in the background allowing Jed Morton to decide exactly what he wants to do. I mean, he's going to suggest, because it's his offense and this is his quarterback. But if Bowles says, hey, look, I think this is how I'd like to see the game go, and this is what we should do. It's a collaborative effort, and it almost worked. Okay, so they were a couple of plays away from being in position to win the game. So it wasn't like, sure, we can sit here as fans and go, oh, I wanted to see him open it up more. But as a coaching staff, in reality, the game plan almost worked. You were 16-point dogs and you almost won the game. So the game plan really almost worked. Their conservative game planning, and that's why I'm sure they also understand. All right, we didn't get it there. We tried, whatever. But next week's a new week, more reps and all that. So we'll hopefully be able to open up the offense a little bit more. Todd Bowles wasn't also he's going to be a big story until they resign him or not. But seeing Mo Wilkerson get benched, boy, hey, wasn't that refreshing? Something that we talked about a few weeks ago. Let's bench the players if they're not going to respond. And we saw Darren Lee get in trouble the 1 week, and then Mo Wilkerson got in trouble. But now Mo Wilkerson gets in even bigger trouble. You know what? I think because of his contract situation, knowing about the guaranteed money, if he gets injured, I think that they'd be silly to play him again. I don't think they should. Maybe they will, but I don't think they should. As long as there's nothing like within the labor laws or anything like that will prevent them from playing him because of that contract, I think the Jets should just bench him the rest of the season. Don't risk him getting hurt and having to pay him $16 million next year over it. And then also, again, I think it was just good to see that they put the hammer down and that they said goodbye to Jeremy Curley, which was a very smart decision since our boy Chad Hansen came up with another awesome catch yesterday.
So I'll kind of try to tackle them in order. I mean, Wilkerson, if he's not actively trying to get his way off this team, he sure as heck is doing a good job passively.
Yep.
Regardless of which way you believe he's doing it. But he clearly is not helping his situation in terms of the way he's doing things, because that's going to get noticed by lots of teams out there. And whether or not he's expecting another big payday, I don't think that's happening, especially given his play.
He's got enough money.
If he wants to go, here's the door.
Yeah.
Honestly, if I were the Jets, I would suspend him the rest of the way. I
I
don't
hope
think they
so.
will, because I don't think they're going to do that, and I'm not quite sure if they're going to make him inactive. Though I do agree with you that why take the chances of him getting injured and having to pay him the remainder of his contract and keeping him on the contract at least for next year. In terms of receivers, with Curley being gone, not a surprise, regardless of whether or not the ghost is the one who gave him his PEDs or how it got in his system. With the need to play the younger players, with the need to kind of see what you have out of our Darius Stewart and Chad Hansen, who you and I both liked last year at the draft, and is starting to get a bit more reps and a bit more play.
He's going to be a good, very important. He's going to be a future part of this team without question.
Agree. So again, I agree. Why bring him back? You're not going to probably use Curley. You're going to use the kid who's been running back with, I think, Nelson, who's been running back kicks, who really hasn't done a particularly good job of running back.
Have you seen Stewart hurt?
You might as well see what you got there and see if maybe you get a little spark and a little bit of play the remainder of the year and see if he shows you anything to be a potential future piece for this team. But I mean, what I like the most out of what happened is Bowles showed that he's not taking the garbage, that he's not going to let Wilkerson run roughshod on the team, that if you're going to show up late, and he showed this earlier in the year with both Wilkerson and then with Darren Lee, that if you do something that's against the rules and the policy of the team, he's going to drop the hammer and he's going to drop it hard. And he dropped it hard on Wilkerson. That basically wasn't just a quarter suspension. It was, you are now sitting for the entire game. And everybody, he didn't say it, but it got out in terms of why he was suspended.
Yeah.
And now everybody in the league knows that he's got this reputation of a malcontent.
Yeah, well, again, he's made enough money, so and he'll get he'll wind up on the market, $5 million a year, who knows? But I mean, the guy's made probably over $50-60 million already, so he's got enough money. I'm sure some team will be more than happy to bring him in, and he'll do just fine as long as he can stay healthy. But we don't care, because there's no way he's going to be part of the Jets next year. Now we know that Curley's gone. And I'd like to see Stewart play more now. He didn't play at all yesterday on offensive snaps, which I don't understand. If you're going to play special teams, what on earth is JoJo Natson doing running around on the field? I mean, are you kidding me? JoJo Natson. I mean, come on.
Like I said, they're going to give him a shot and see what they got.
No, but I mean, why is he playing an offense?
I have no idea.
Over Stewart. I mean, come on. Is Stewart really that bad? I mean, has he really not understood the assignments? Because if JoJo Natson's getting offensive reps over Darius Stewart, that is not a good sign for Stewart, because Hansen has clearly been a better prospect at this point in time. So Stewart's got a long way to go. You get Nunwa back. That'll be big next year. You got Anderson and you got Hansen, but look, they need to go out and get themselves a big physical receiver. That's what they have to do. I think we saw Robbie Anderson. See, as we saw in the game here, when Robbie Anderson isn't making those deep catches on those fly patterns from McCown, he's not going to do much underneath. He's not a big guy. Tall, yes. Skinny, yes. He's just not that type of receiver. That's why the Jets need to get themselves. Now, of course, Nunwa was a big physical receiver, and so Stewart, but they got to get themselves a tall physical receiver, somebody that can go out and grab it. And that's it. I think other than that, I still like what we see at the receiver position as far as some of the young talent. And we know Forte is going to be gone. We know Wilkerson's gone. And I tell you what, if Buster Skrine can just keep playing more games like the one yesterday, then you bring him back next year. He's added to the group of DBs, and there's nothing wrong with that because we know the Jets are going to have to add some more DBs next year. But he's definitely somebody that we can hopefully count on as a veteran in the secondary. Let's just hope he continues to play more like he did yesterday. Because as we've said before, the thing that's really his strength is his physical nature, his tackling, his blitzing, his run defending. That's all very good. It's just, of course, he's a penalty machine and he's not very good in coverage most of the time. But that could be somebody that we could hold on to next year and maybe the only veteran guy that has a little bit, I think he's making $6 million next year or something close to that. So the only guy that's making a little bit more money than we'd care to be giving up that'll probably return. But the Jets, $81 million in open cap space next year. That's the fourth best in the league. And just to show you how much money that is, The Bills, who have made all these moves to get all these draft picks and to free up, to get picks and free up cap space, they have 41 million. The Patriots have 17, and the Dolphins have 15. So even though Brian Costello in one of his articles today wrote, I was reading through it, and on one of them he goes, "These are dark days for a Jets fan." Now, how ignorant must you be about the sport to say something like that, and to try and push this dark days nonsense? I mean, how uneducated can listeners be out there that aren't listening to this show to fall for that nonsense when the team is obviously headed in the right direction, $81 million in cap space, excellent draft status, and this guy's printing "These are dark days for Jets fans"?
People can say whatever they want. You and I have a different view in terms of what we've seen so far this team. Am I happy they've lost? I believe it's 7 of 9. No, clearly not. I'm clearly not happy in terms of the end result, but I'm also quite cognizant that coming into the year, the end result wasn't the goal. Because even if, let's say, by some miracle they'd gotten in the playoffs, this wasn't a team that was going far. We're looking to build for the future, which is what this organization is hopefully doing in the pieces that they've brought in. So I don't share the same view that it's dark days. Now, granted, we have pretty well identified the needs and where they need to remediate this team and the holes that need to be filled. The first one being obviously the person who takes the snap under center. That's first and foremost. There are other components that have to be done. Offensive line needs some help. Cornerback needs some help. I think Screen, as you said, is probably a good third corner, a in-the-box type corner as opposed to a cover corner. Claiborne has been really good for the most part in that role. Hopefully they bring him back and he stays healthy. But I also think that they do need to go out and get a second corner because what you've seen so far from Adams in May is really solid. And they also need another linebacker, a guy who can maybe be more of a 3-down linebacker who can rush the passer, but also cover. And that's one of those things that maybe you can target in free agency with the 81 million, as you mentioned, that they have in terms of potential cap space. Although part of that you got to figure is going to be used up on guys like Morris Claiborne if you're able to bring him back.
Yeah, Claiborne shouldn't cost us that much money. When you have 81 million, there ain't no way that Claiborne is going to be a dent in that. So I think they'll be fine there. And yeah, I mean, look, one corner, definite pass rusher. We know quarterbacks at the top of the list. I was glad to see some of these mock drafts starting to come out on some of the big networks now, and exactly what I thought we were going to see. I think I was looking at Mayox, and he had the Jets picking a defender with with I think that the ninth pick maybe as of last week, and the Jets picking a defender with Baker Mayfield still on the board. So this is exactly what I was expecting, was that they would be able to get a guy like that and not have to do anything if they didn't want to. So the Jets are going to be again, what that means is the Jets are going to get a quarterback if they want one. They're going to be able to get one of the 4 quarterbacks as long as Darnold comes out. Then and all 4 of them are there, then that's a good thing. And then you could definitely look for that pass rusher, which we've been looking at for a while. So it's gonna, like I said, it's gonna be a fun thing. Hopefully Xavier Cooper plays well down the stretch. I mean, he made some plays. Now he's just not a scab. You keep in mind that this guy was a 3rd-round draft pick in 2015, and so the guy had some talent. Now, whatever the reason being of why it hasn't worked, he's still only 26 years old. So it would be nice to be able to find guys like that because he could play all over the line. And with Wilkerson gone and, of course, Richardson gone, all of a sudden the defensive line now does become a position where you're going to have to fill some spots. Now, you don't have to go out and draft anybody high at that spot when you're running a 3-4. You've got your bull on the line in Leonard Williams. Now you just got to go ahead and spend like a 5th or a 6th round pick on a nose tackle. And hopefully a guy like Cooper can help there. I'm surprised Ely hasn't gotten as many reps late in the season as he did early in the season. So I'm not sure what that's about. I think Bass has turned into a pretty good role guy. And as far as the linebacker situation, look, you got Davis, you have Lee, and you have Jenkins. So besides depth, we all know what the major need is, and that is to go out and get the very best, outside rushing linebacker that you can find, and whether that's free agency or the draft.
They definitely need somebody who can rush the passer. Absolutely. I don't think there's any question to need another strong pass rusher. Clearly, with with Sheldon gone already, with Wilkerson probably gone, they're going to have some holes in the defensive line. Ely got off to a great start, but has definitely regressed a little bit, and we haven't seen much of him of late, which kind of is in line a little bit with his performance in the past in terms of his career. So I'm not necessarily 100% sold, but I do think he's a nice piece to bring in terms of depth for the defensive line. But there are lots of holes. The good part is the Jets have lots of cash to be able to hopefully remediate a lot of those holes. But there are other instances of players that have stepped forward this year that maybe we didn't expect. And what could end up happening is while the Jets target a wide receiver, they may not have to target an elite wide receiver. They may be able to target somebody who meets the needs of what they have, but isn't necessarily an upper tier, upper echelon type of defensive lineman that's going to cost you a fortune of money, enabling them to save money and use on other positions that we know they have needs.
Yeah, I mean, there are some positions that we know that the Jets are going to be in need of that, where they're drafting. Look, it all depends on what they want to do, whether or not they're going to go with best available player or whether or not they're going to go with need. So, but look, in the first round, again, they're in a perfect spot to get one of those quarterbacks, and that's going to be a lot of fun, all that anticipation and so forth. We got a long way to go, but we are definitely, once the season is over, we are going to have an early preview of what to expect as far as free agency and the draft and all that other stuff and contracts and such. And now I did get a message on our YouTube, one of our YouTube subscribers at Prime Sports Network, fella by the name of Lil Pontoon, brought up something interesting, and that is we have heard rumors, which is true. It's not like these rumors haven't been out there, about the possibility of the Colts not being happy with Andrew Luck in the whole situation, as far as Luck not being happy there and all that kind of stuff. Of course, that's something that will get worked out in a couple of months. But that would be very interesting. What would you give up for Andrew Luck, knowing his shoulder situation? If the Colts put him, if they put him available, would you rather keep your pick, draft one of these quarterbacks, or bring in an Andrew Luck?
Oh boy, I got to be honest with you. I don't really know if I would go crazy for him. I think the fact that he's missed so much time and all the whispers and rumors and innuendos that shoulder is still not 100%. And the rumors that I've heard, I thought that there may be a second surgery that's required if things don't necessarily remediate themselves quickly. I would be very, very reluctant to give up any type of big asset in order to acquire him, and that would be a mid-first round pick. I love Luck, the guy who carried that Colts team for several years, but the injury history makes me really reluctant to give up anything of major value to be able to try to get him.
All right, what would you give up for Bridgewater?
Bridgewater, I wouldn't give up a 1 because I don't think he'll bring back a 1. But I think a 2 at a minimum would be an interesting type of return pick to try to get him now. If Minnesota's really sold on Case Keenum, and it sure looks that they are, and the viewpoint is Bridgewater is fully healed from that ACL injury and all the other injuries that took place with his knee, which we've seen. We haven't necessarily seen the ability to run yet, which may come down the road with another 6 months or so to heal. That's the type of guy who could run your offense. And if you get him, then you're not necessarily taking a quarterback in the first round.
What would you do? Would you rather spend your top 10 pick on a non-quarterback, give up your second round pick, because they have 2, give up your second round pick for Bridgewater, and therefore, of course, skipping over on once again drafting a quarterback, one of those top 4 quarterbacks? Would you rather do that, or would you rather use that top 10 pick on the quarterback and forget about Bridgewater, or would you do both? Would you go, I'll give you the second, I'll trade for Bridgewater, and I'm going to use up that top 10 pick with another quarterback too?
Most likely, I probably would go with the route of giving up the second for Bridgewater, my second, not my first second, and then giving up and then drafting a non-quarterback with that first pick. Because the viewpoint is, with Bridgewater being as young as he is, and especially missing so much time because of the injury, he doesn't have a ton of wear and tear on him. And what you've seen, I think we all thought for Minnesota that he was going to be their franchise quarterback. So there's no reason why you can't think in this system why he couldn't be the Jets franchise.
Well, what happens if he gets hurt again? and then you've completely
Well,
ruined your year.
You can make the argument of any quarterback. How many quarterbacks
No,
are you going to take?
no. You can't. No. Nobody knows if Teddy Bridgewater is going to be able to stay healthy.
Right. Well, again, the injury in itself was not necessarily one that you expected to see, right? It wasn't just a fluky kind of an injury. I mean, it was a pretty significant non-contact injury.
So you take that you'd roll the dice that wouldn't come back to haunt the franchise. I mean, it would only hurt him a year, but you'd roll the dice for the year next year, banking on Bridgewater staying healthy.
I would.
Okay. Yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, somebody, I'd have to think about that. I guess it would all depend on, who would be available. Again, I think I might just go ahead and take Mayfield, even though I probably would think long and hard about doing both, to tell you the truth. Especially we got that extra second-round pick. I mean, for a franchise that hasn't a quarterback in a long time, I don't see a problem in drafting a guy like Mayfield and trading for Bridgewater. And then just go, all right, go at it. Competition. Nothing wrong with it. So, anyway, that's what I do. But we'll see. That's definitely a problem that we would like to have around the organization, something that is hopefully going to get taken care of one way or another in the next few months. So the Jets are going to take on the Chargers this week. Chargers coming off a loss, and the Chargers are also going to be pretty upset about coming off that loss, knowing how important the game is for them. So not a good situation for the Jets. And look, what happened yesterday was a best case scenario for us fans. They played hard. They did their best. The young players, especially on defense, did a good job, and they lost. And they're out of the playoffs. We weren't going to the playoffs anyway, and so the draft pick situation didn't get messed up. So what's wrong with that, right? So as long as they play like that the last 2 weeks of the season, they just play hard. And if they lose, they lose. Then I'm all for that. Of course, I want to see some better play on offense, but I'd be all for that.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, hopefully you see the young guys continue to play well. They are competitive. They end up losing. They maintain their high draft pick. Hopefully even move up a little bit in the draft with other teams winning. Because right now I think they're 9th or 10th, and then we go from there.
All right, Jan. So we will talk again. We got a few more of these to go in the regular season. And then, like I said, we will wrap things up, let everybody know exactly what to look forward to when we start doing our off-season shows. So appreciate your time as always. And we will talk to you again on Monday. Oh, wait. Next Monday is Christmas. So I guess we will talk again maybe, Tuesday? Is that what we're going to talk?
Tuesday.
All right. Excellent. Thanks, Jan.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, that's Jan Levine, AirJan23. That's his Twitter handle. So that's where you can check him out. You can check us out on Twitter at PrimeSN. And, of course, we're going to have a full week's worth of football coverage, college football. Matter of fact, I think I'm doing a show tomorrow. Pretty sure. We're going to do a show tomorrow. We're going to update what's going on as far as the NFL playoffs. We're going to take a look at futures. And we're going to get you ready for the rest of the bowl season. So a lot of college and NFL. We just haven't figured out a time yet. But we will have a show tomorrow on the Ourlads Football Network at ourlads.com. We'll have our NFL show with Tony Mejia on Thursday to preview Week 16. And then everything else going on as usual, including fantasy football with our final fantasy show on Sunday with the championship games for us fantasy football geeks coming up this week. So for Jan Levine and Greg DePalma, thanks for tuning in to Jets Uncovered on the Ourlads Football Radio Network.